Welcome. My name is Cisan Cuervo. I am a PhD student at the University of Cincinnati, and today I will be presenting a project that is very dear to my heart. It's called Digital Dual Language Books for English Language Learners. Now, the background of this project goes way back to when I learned English as a second language at the age of 11. It was definitely a difficult process, but it didn't take me long to realize that there was a lack of bilingual materials to support both my teacher and I. Now, many years later, as I began my PhD journey, I decided to continue the works of my academic advisor, Dr. Holbeck, and give it a little twist. In 2017, Head Start programs nationwide reported that 37% of participants enrolled were from Hispanic origins who primarily spoke Spanish at home. Now, English language learners are individuals who are in the process of learning English as a second language but are not yet fluent. Now, these young children who are English language learners enter kindergarten and are taught literacy skills such as reading and writing alongside their English-speaking peers. However, these young English language learners are often at risk to meet both language and literacy milestones due to either not understanding the language of instruction, and many of them really struggle to develop the necessary English vocabulary to read and write. So how can we use technology to bridge this gap and support monolingual teachers and clinicians who are working with this English language learning population? Now, the theoretical framework for this study that you can see this little visual here for is based on Cummings' theory of interdependence, which proposes that language and literacy skills from a child's L1 can be transferred and shared into a child's L2 when they're learning a second language. So the objective of this study was to quantify and compare the verbal responsiveness of Hispanic preschool English language learning students when presented with a digital book using two different modalities. So we used an English book and then we used a Spanish-English book. Our participants were 20 English language learners who were in preschool attending a local Head Start facility here. And the children were between the ages of 3 and 4. And they all met 3 important criteria. So the first one was that they were all exposed to a minimum of 80% Spanish output at home. The second one, that there were no neurological, physical, or cognitive concerns reported by the parent. And the third one was that they were all rated with a minimum of 50% verbal output in English, as reported by a 5-point rating scale conducted by the Spanish-speaking SOP. Now, all participants were assigned to one of 2 groups. So one group was going to hear the story in English only, and the second group was going to hear the story both in English and in Spanish. For the purpose of our study, we used the wordless Renfrew bus story, and that was previously recorded on an iPad by a research assistant and myself. So the children were presented with the book, and every 2 pages we stopped and the children were asked factual questions. So like what, where, and who questions that was explicitly stated in the book. And then at the end of the story, they were elicited to retell the story back to the research assistant who was presenting the story. Now, all the verbal behaviors during the book reading and the narrative retell were audio and video recorded and transcribed verbatim. So all the data that we collected was coded by a trained research assistant and was analyzed using SALT. And then the group outcomes were compared for 4 different components. So we compared MOU for morphemes. We compared total number of words, type token ratio, and percentage of response. And there's a table here that shows some of our data. So we conducted between group pair t-test, and our results revealed no significant differences between the English only and the dual language video books when we use the SALT measures. However, I believe that there is a continued need for research in this area that can provide evidence-based tools to support monolingual teachers and clinicians who are working with English language learners, as well as providing a bilingual resource for parents to interact with their children at home. Some of the limitations of our study included the small sample size. We only had 20 children. The research design, since we only had 10 children in each group. The variation in age, so the children were only, 3 and 4. And then the time they had spent in the classroom previously. So there were some children who had been there for 6 months, but some children had been there for a year. And that can impact their English learning skills. So future studies that we're looking into and hoping for the future could consider a variation in books and maybe a within subject experimental research design that may be more appropriate for the sample size, and then further assessment of the children's language proficiency in both English and Spanish may also be beneficial, so that the children can look more like to see, so we can really see the difference and analyze further. So this is my project, and I just thank you for your attention.